Hello, this is Jason from Pyramid Scheme Termination Cause. I am the founder and CEO of the startup nonprofit. My inspiration comes from my life and the experiences I have had with pyramid schemes or multi-level marketing scams. I had alienated my friends, I wasted so much time, and I was so aggravated of all the pyramid scheme fluff that I had to experience while trying to find work in college and even after I graduated out of college. What I want to do is to start a movement against multi-level marketing pyramid schemes and spread awareness so people can avoid them and know for themselves what kind of fraud they are. I've had an interview with Robert FitzPatrick. He's pretty well known and he's been in several documentaries regarding pyramid schemes and multi-level marketing. And I'm going to show this interview. And I know that I should have used better audio equipment and video equipment, and I regret not doing such, but nevertheless, it was a great interview and it was very insightful, and I hope you can learn from it.
Hi, my name is Jason. I'm the founder of the Pyramid Scheme Termination Cause, a 501c3 nonprofit made to spread awareness of pyramid schemes and multi-level marketing. This is Robert F. FitzPatrick, and I'm honored to have him here today. So give us a minute and tell the audience about yourself.
Yes, thank you, Jason, and thank you for producing this. I've been involved with pyramid schemes and multi-level marketing for a long time. And so I've probably been involved consistently longer than almost anybody. There are a few others that were colleagues of mine from the beginning. But I began to get involved as the result of a personal encounter with a pyramid scheme. That was, for me, a kind of jolting, awakening experience to realize that I had been caught up in such a ridiculous scam, and I was unaware of it. And I'm an educated person, I have a college degree. I had, at the time that this occurred, I had been in business, so I was not a particularly naive person. And yet there I was. When it was revealed as a pyramid scheme, I was compelled or impelled, let's say, to go out and find out what is a pyramid scheme, what is its psychological allure, why did I not see it for what it was? And this led to eventually writing a book, which came out in over 20 years ago, called False Prophets. And as a result of writing that book, I became involved as an expert witness in court. I became an authority on pyramid schemes and multi-level marketing schemes. So eventually I set up a website with two other people who were similarly interested, and that became pyramidschemealert.org. And that was one of the early sites exposing pyramid schemes and particularly focusing on the multi-level marketing disguise for pyramid schemes. That site is still operating, but of course there are many others today. But through that site, I have stayed engaged. I have talked to thousands of people, literally, who have been in pyramid schemes as victims, even a few who have been the perpetrators and promoters. I've talked to many journalists, lawyers, federal and state regulators, and others that have an interest in this, academic researchers and so on. So it became a body of knowledge, you might say, that a few other people around the world have focused on. This body of knowledge includes criminology, because pyramid schemes are crimes, psychology, of course, business, commerce, marketing, and related fields. So it is a confluence of many different fields that really, in order to understand what a pyramid scheme is. So I now live in the mountains of North Carolina. I've recently finished a more comprehensive book on the subject called Ponzi-nomics. Ponzi and nomics being part of the word economics, the idea that these schemes have become a kind of body of thought, an ideology, a delusional belief system. That's the origin of the title of the book. And I help promote the book. I've helped with several documentaries, podcasts, and so on, in others who are trying to address to their audiences some of the knowledge that I've gained over time.
Thank you for the introduction, and I will attach the links of Robert's books below. All right, so I'm sure with your experience, you see a lot of commonalities and reoccurring themes. And I'm sure you heard the arguments that MLM promoters use to promote their so-called business opportunities. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play devil's advocate.
Sure.
And you try to counter my points.
Okay.
The points I say will be very similar to what people will hear in MLM events,
yes,
recruiting events. Aren't all businesses shaped like pyramids? Isn't there a CEO at the top and upper managers and middle managers, and frontline managers and frontline workers? And doesn't the CEO get paid the most? So isn't that shaped like a pyramid? Aren't all business pyramids?
All businesses are shaped if you chart them out, which is sort of like saying all human beings have a head, arms, legs, and so on. So they're all the same, which of course they're not. People are very different. Just because a company has a structure that if you chart it out, the organizational structure, you could say that it's a pyramid, but that's not significant. So what? I mean, that is not what makes a pyramid scheme. The shape is not what makes a pyramid scheme. What makes a pyramid scheme is the fraudulent and deceptive solicitation of money, and the money siphons from the bottom and goes to the top. The CEO does not get his money directly from the vice president and the managers and the employees or the factory workers. He gets it from customers who have purchased the product of the company, not from the people inside the company who are paying the company itself. They don't pay, they get paid. So regular company people get paid. Pyramid scheme, they pay into the scheme. Regular company CEO earns his money because he has chief executive responsibility for the organization, the entire organization, and the income that he receives is based on the success of that organization in marketing its product out into the world. Pyramid scheme, the person at the top has no real executive responsibility at all. All they do is just position by position, they gain money. The money doesn't come from outside. It comes from the people in the scheme itself who are buying product, paying fees, going to motivation seminars, buying books, and so on, all internal. It's an internal money transfer. So while they might superficially and incidentally appear shaped the same, if you didn't look at anything else, that is of no real consequence or significance. What is consequential and important is how it operates and what it does. And the two have nothing to do with each other. Pyramid scheme doesn't operate like a company at all.
That was very well said. In short, there is no legitimate outside demand for pyramid scheme so-called products.
That's right.
A multi-level marketing.
Yes. Here's an example. Multi-level marketing says they are direct selling. So I've been, as I said, I've been at this over 20 years, and I've talked with thousands of people who have been in multi-level marketing. I've never yet found one person who actually earned a sustainable income just from selling their product to the general public. That is, no recruiting involved. They buy the product from the company and they resell it at a profit. Not one have I ever met.
and it's mathematically impossible because it has a very top-weighted commission system.
That's right. That's right. I mean, if anybody has ever been in sales, and many people, let's face it, who get recruited have never been in sales, so they don't know, and they're very vulnerable to being misled about these things. But if they had ever been, anyone who's ever been in sales will say and will see immediately that multi-level marketing can't be direct selling, because one, they keep adding and adding more and more salespeople in your immediate area. If you're in sales, that's the last thing you want, are more and more salespeople in your area selling the same product, and they have the same price that you get, right? That's the first clue that it can't be a direct selling. The second clue is the one you just referenced. The pay plan is structured so that you actually, if you bought the product and then resold it to your next door neighbor, the commission or the spread between what you paid and what they bought it for is not very much. And that's not enough to support direct selling. You need a lot of profit margin because you have to go find customers. You have to cultivate the customer. You have to keep the customer. It's very labor intensive. It's time intensive. So you can't operate with 20%, 30%. You need 100 or 200% margin on your product. In multi-level marketing, you don't get that. Well, oh, they say, but wait, if someone below you buys it in your downline, you get an override from that. Yes, but you don't get much override unless you are way, way up the chain. So it makes it impossible really to make money from selling. The only way you could possibly make money is from recruiting, which is not selling. That's something altogether different.
Right. It is totally unlike retail, and retail is much different than multi-level marketing. Can you tell us the difference between retail and multi-level marketing in short sentences?
Yeah, so retail is very sound. All of us live with retail. If you're a retail salesperson, or if you're selling products on a retail, you buy at one price, you sell at a somewhat higher price. The difference between what you bought it for and what you sell it for is your profit. Out of that profit, you have to pay all your costs. Of course, you have to pay the cost you paid for the product, any marketing expenses, business administration, plus you pay your taxes from that, and so on. That's how retail works. If you're in retail, you don't want competitors. You try to have as an exclusive as best you can. If you have a territory, you don't want other people in your territory. And you want as much margin as possible to cover all your costs to give you enough money on your sales. That's retail selling. Multi-level marketing is not like that at all. Of course, they're constantly adding salespeople in your area. You don't have much of a margin. You don't have a territory. This is not retail selling. You couldn't make money. And that's why I said in 20 years, I've never met anyone who did make money that way. I have met a few people who made money, but they were top level recruiters and they had a huge downline. Below them, nobody made money. Only they made money.
And
so they made money.
Oh, sorry. That fraction is not even 1%. It's a fraction of 1%. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right. Per year, there will be a fraction of a percent at the top levels of the scheme who are making money at the expense of all the people below. But if you stretched it out over a 5-year period, recognizing that every year about half of the people in the MLM scheme quit and are replaced, if you added all of those people cumulatively, how many were in it over a 5-year period? Now, how many of them ever made a profit? I don't know how to even describe it, but it would be a tiny percent of a percent. That's how bad it is.
Yes. And it seems the odds of making money in an illegal pyramid scheme is more higher than a multi-level marketing pyramid scheme.
That's right. That's right. there are pretty straightforward pyramid schemes out there. They're called gifting schemes and so on. And in most of those schemes, you actually, the number of people who could make money at the expense of all the others is actually better, quite a bit better than in a multi-level market. I mentioned that I had been in this scheme. That's how I got started, called the airplane game. The airplane game had about a 9%, 10% of the people could make money. You know, mathematically, about 9 people would lose for 1 to win, so-called win. Not really win, because you got it through deception. But in multi-level marketing, it would be maybe 1 in 1,000, right? In by the scheme I was in, it was about 1 in 10. So yeah, the pure pyramid schemes actually have better odds. In fact, gambling has better odds, if you want to call it odds.
Absolutely. It's very ironic. Something legal generate less returns than something illegal. It's mind-boggling.
I may be getting ahead, but since you used the word mind-boggling, I think it's a correct term. It's so incredible, many people cannot believe it. It literally does boggle their mind. And so it's because it is so far from what it claimed to be that a person could say, they couldn't dare call this a business opportunity and produce this kind of loss. No one would have the audacity to do such a thing. So it must not be true, what you're saying, speaking to me. In fact, it is true, and it's verifiable, easily verifiable. But it is, as you said, so amazing, so incredible that many people just don't believe it. They can't believe it.
And I know for a fact multi-level marketing hides behind many fronts, many layers of deception. Like they hide behind politics, they hide behind religion, they may donate to charity. Can you elaborate what kind of fronts they use?
Yeah, the discussion we just had a moment ago regarding the odds of success, the rate of loss, and so on. We have a little cat at our house as well. Here's the Siamese, which are the most the most audacious of cats, I think. The conversation we just had about how it's structured, how many win, how many lose, where does the money come from, internal, external, retail. If you were solicited to join multi-level marketing, none of those subjects ever come up. They never bring it up. And if you should try to bring it up, they will divert you. And instead, they come with these fronts, as you said. And the front might be a concept of getting you to think about your dreams, the American dream, and the fulfillment of the American dream. What have you wanted in your life that you have not yet gained? So now you're thinking about that. You're not thinking about mathematics, odds, retail, wholesale, anything. Or they may present it to you as a sort of religious concept, that this is godly to do this. This is helping people. Or it is a kind of a concept in which being prosperous is something that God wants you to be happy and prosperous. So this is doing God's work. Or they present it as an American proposition, because America is based on business and success and opportunity. And so you should salute the flag and think of this as an element of patriotism. So now you're thinking patriotism, God, religion, prosperity, my dreams. You're not thinking about looking and due diligence. You're not asking questions. You're not saying, how many win? How many lose? How much does it cost? How often do people quit? How long do they stay in? Explain to me the commission rate. You're not doing any of that. They have diverted you away from it with these other fronts or covers, as you said.
Well said. They even fool government officials or people that work at the FTC.
Even the FTC have regarded multi-level marketing. They start with what it claims to be, direct selling. And there are products being bought and sold and bought and sold. How they are bought and sold, the entire economics of it, the pay plan, the compensation scheme, and so on, the FTC generally doesn't look at that. They start from the premise that, well, it's a buying and selling, it's a business. And from there, business in America and in most parts of the world is treated in a kind of exalted way. It's how we distribute products. It's how we all earn a living, most of us, not everyone, but so it's given a certain deference. And the government has done that. But of course, the government has just simply also not looked very closely.
Absolutely.
But the cover has served as a kind of camouflage for them.
And there's a backstory as well, how they lobbied the government.
Yes,
There's
a backstory. There's another element to why the FTC doesn't look more closely. Why don't they? Well, millions and millions of dollars have been poured into members of Congress to keep the FTC from looking closely. Remember, the FTC is a political organization funded by Congress, answerable to Congress. So it's political and it answers to the politicians. And if the politicians are getting a lot of money from this lobby called multi-level marketing, then it's unlikely that the FTC will independently go against that. And we have a 40-year history of this, of money, millions and millions of dollars poured into the coffers of members of Congress.
Absolutely, and that's a verifiable fact.
It's a verifiable fact. It even goes further. It's not just the lobbyists, even members of the FTC, commissioners, staff members, attorneys have gone to work for multi-level marketing companies. In other words, you work at the FTC for a little while, and then you go to the MLM company and you bring that insider knowledge with you, and you can make a lot more money over there than at the FTC. So many people in the FTC don't go after MLM because, well, frankly, they're looking for jobs there.
Yeah,
And,
speaking of FTC, if you ask the FTC employees to name one example of a good MLM, they can't give you one. It's the most basic question that they can't dance around.
Yes, yes, and yet, if you go to the FTC website, or if you have occasion, if you're lucky enough to talk to an FTC attorney or representative investigator, they will always quote to you the official position of the FTC, which is multi-level marketing is legitimate. Multi-level marketing is a legitimate form of direct selling. Oh, that sounds great, really. Well, there are about 1,000 of them out there. Some of them have been prosecuted. About 30 of them have been shut down over the years as pyramid schemes. So we know that multi-level marketing can operate as a pyramid scheme. And some of those that were shut down had operated for years before they were shut down. And millions of people were churned in and out through that scam that turned out to be a pyramid scheme discovered through prosecution. So that being true, Mr. Commissioner, Mr. FTC, Mrs. FTC, whatever, could you name one for me that is legitimate, that you can say for sure? This one is, you said MLM is legitimate. Please name one that I could be assured if my son, my daughter, or me wanted to join, I would know that it's an honest, legitimate company. And never in the history of the FTC have they ever named one. They will not name one.
Absolutely.
They will not name one.
And I will attach that video on this interview.
Question was, is there an MLM that pays attention to supply and demand and tells recruits not to further recruit based on a perception of supply and demand? We've already heard different comments about the sort of the all against all competition that can take place there. But are you aware of any supply and demand issues that come into play?
Obviously, I haven't looked at many, frankly, just the ones that have kind of come across our prow here at the FTC. So I don't know.
Very good. Yes, because it is dismaying. It is very dismaying. And you ask, well, why can't you name one? I mean, if they're legitimate and there are so many, surely one can be named as an iconic representative, a paragon of what is the legitimate multi-level market. They never name one.
Yes.
There's a clue right there. There's something stinking, something
They cannot
smelly.
answer the most basic question possible to ask.
Right.
And then speaking about fronts, another front that multi-level marketing use is they're traded at the public stock market.
Yes.
If you're traded on stocks, I mean, you have to have some kind of corporate responsibility.
You would think. You would think.
So can you debunk that?
It isn't actually true. And we've seen enough examples. And I find that that's a myth that people believe, well, if they sell stock and the SEC is overseeing them, then surely a pyramid scheme couldn't be sold as a stock. But of course, we know that it can be. And some that have been prosecuted were. And we also know that the president of one of the stock exchanges turned out to be the largest Ponzi operator in the country. Of course, that's Bernard Madoff. He was president of NASDAQ, chairman of NASDAQ, NASDAQ being one of the stock exchanges. So we've seen others. Enron was considered the most innovative company in America, and producing profits that nobody had ever seen before. It turned out to be operating fraudulently. So what turns out, for those who are prone to think that, all they have to do is look a little bit more at the stock exchange and they would discover that. But in fact, the SEC really does not examine the business model. They only examined the financial part of it, where they are buying and selling and promoting their securities. And the actual business itself, the SEC does not dig down and look to say, well, they said they sold this product, but who did they really sell it to? Was it sold internally, or was it sold out in the competitive? They don't look at that. That is not what the SEC does.
So MLMs are legitimately generating revenue and making money, and the stocks go up at times. But the real question is, how do they do it?
How do they do it? So the stock market is different and separate from business, as we know.
Right.
Business can be very, as we saw during this last year of COVID, where so many businesses were depressed and barely operating, and yet the stock market was booming. So it isn't, the two are not necessarily connected, really.
Absolutely.
And a company can sell stock on the market, and that stock can have a great market value and so on, whereas the company could be operating fraudulently or could be on its way to failure. It's really, the two are not connected necessarily. And that's certainly true in multi-level marketing. People buying and selling those stocks, in a way, don't even care whether the consumers are getting harmed.
Yeah, speaking about stocks and how they're not connected with the business itself, can you give us an example using Herbalife and the short stock war between Bill Ackman and Herbalife?
Yeah, so as we saw with in 2013 approximately, one of the largest hedge fund in the country, run called Pershing Square Capital, was headed by a man named William Ackman, had read the research on Herbalife and concluded it was a pyramid scheme. It was a disguised sales company. And so he announced that he was going to expose the company. And he took a large position, almost $1 billion, in what they call a short. So the idea being that if the stock goes down, he will make money. And so he then went on several years of campaigning to expose it. And for years, several years, terrible exposures, publicity, bad publicity on Herbalife was revealed. Latino community being ravaged, people losing their homes, documentary produced on this, showing people being lured into a scheme in which they paid thousands of dollars to buy leads to get on the phone and recruit other people into Herbalife. Data on the loss rates showing the 99% loss rates. Data showing 50 to 80% of the people quitting within a year, and so on. Data on the Herbalife nutrition centers revealing that these people were losing, in some cases, their homes, defaulted mortgages and so on, because they had invested in these schemes. And yet, the stock never really went down. It went down briefly and then went back up, 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 and kept going up. Why? Because another hedge fund bought the stock and supported the stock. And so it reveals that the information, the truth about the company, was far less important to the value of the stock than the reality of who's buying and who's selling. So one hedge fund keeps buying, the other had taken a short position, but the buying was actually designed to try and force that short seller to have to cover his short, which would have pushed the stock even up. It's a bit complicated, but the point we're making here is that all the shenanigans, all the maneuverings going on Wall Street had nothing really to do with what Herbalife did on the street of scamming all these millions of people. And many of them couldn't even speak English, had come into the United States seeking the American dream, and were buying and putting all their savings into these ridiculous Herbalife schemes, and were losing and being ruined. That didn't matter to the stock market.
Well said, very well said. You explained how the business operations and the stock market prices are not related.
They're disconnected completely.
Disconnected, totally disconnected. So let's talk about MLM impact in society. So how many people participate in these multi-level marketing schemes?
Well, I don't know if a number will actually make the difference here. I can tell you, if you just walk out and ask almost anybody on the street, anybody, about multi-level marketing, I'm pretty sure anybody you talk to today will either have been involved at some point in their life, or someone they know, or someone fairly close to them has been involved. It touches almost everybody now. You know, over 20 million households a year are involved. But again, remember, half are quitting and the other half are being recruited every year. So tens of millions of people. If you expand it worldwide, it works out to about 1 in 14 households every year are involved that year in multi-level marketing. So we're talking about something that is pervasive all over at every level of society, and not just poor people, not just women, not just concentrated in any one ethnic community or another. It has touched almost everybody. It's everywhere. It's been around for a long time now. And so anything like that has a big impact on people when you have that many people affected. But multi-level marketing isn't just like a product that you say, well, everybody's bought a toothbrush too. everybody's bought a bar of Ivory soap, perhaps, or something like that. We're talking about something far more significant in your life. If I solicit you to get into multi-level marketing, I'm not just soliciting you to buy a product. I want you to get involved. I want you to recruit your friends and neighbors. I want you to stake your hopes and dreams on this. I want you to use the product. I want you to solicit other people. I want you to change your life too. I don't want you to talk to people who are questioning it. I want you to stay away from them. I want you to come to meetings constantly. I want you to act in a certain way that I tell you, will help you succeed at this. I want you to read only what I tell you to read that will help you succeed at this, and not read anything else. So multi-level marketing is almost like a religion, like a pervasive religion. It invades every part of your life. So if you got something that is invading every part of a person's life, and it is invading this many people's lives, it's having an effect on people's relationships, their attitude toward work, their attitude toward government, their view of success and failure, what is work. It's all being reshaped and affected by having been involved in multi-level marketing. It's a powerful, powerful effect and force in our society. And for an individual, it can be so powerful that I have dealt with people who have gotten divorced over it, lost most of their friends, gone bankrupt, lost their homes, even committed suicide. That's how powerful it can be.
Absolutely, and the occult aspects really changes a person's way of thinking, like the laws of attraction. And people are afraid to speak bad things in existence, because if they speak bad things, they think bad things will come into their lives, so they won't admit certain health issues, certain faults. So it doesn't just affect them financially.
Definitely not.
Cult aspect. Can you explain how multi-level marketing shuts the vast majority of people up so they don't speak against it?
So when we say cult aspects, we're talking about a relationship, an organizational dynamic in which a small group or even a single person exerts almost total control over other people. And they do this through persuasion methods, dominating their time, gaining control over how they think, separating them from other people who may question it, separating them from their past and their past identity, and giving them a new language and a new way of looking, and also offering usually a utopian vision of what they can gain by being in this little group and disconnecting from everyone else and thinking this way. So that's a cult. This is very common in multi-level marketing. Multi-level marketing lures you into a delusional dream world in which special knowledge is supposedly available to you on how to gain wealth and happiness. And that the people in the multi-level marketing know this, and it's secret knowledge, special knowledge. You don't have it, but they do. But to get what they have, you have to be obedient, follow their directives, live the way they tell you to live, do what they tell you to do, spend the way they tell you to spend your money too. They gain complete control over you, all telling you that they have this knowledge, you don't, and you have to do these things in order to get this knowledge. They will give it to you, but you have to follow them totally. You can't deviate, you can't doubt. Among the things they will tell you to do is to believe 100%. You can't ask questions. So if you say, you know, Jason, you said, well, how many people actually make money? Now see there, Jason, there you are. That question implies doubt, weakness. So what difference does it make how many did or didn't if you believe you can get it? So it's up to you to believe. That question should never enter your mind. You should not be asking that question. That question will only lead you astray. You should not even be thinking about that. You should only be thinking about You staying in a belief in a straight line, looking forward, keeping that vision all the time, right? That's how it works. That's how they gain control over people. And pretty soon the person is not thinking for themselves. They're not associating with their friends or family. They're not thinking objectively. They're starting to do self-destructive things, borrow money, spend money they don't have, mortgage their house, run up their credit card, drop out of college, abandon or neglect friends and family or their spouse. Well, that's had consequences. These things have terrible consequences. They start shredding their personal social network, their real social, the one that sustains them.
So they don't lose just money. They lose things of intrinsic value that are more valuable than money.
Far more valuable. You can recoup money, but sometimes you cannot recoup friendships. You can't recoup time either. You know, if you waste a year and a half chasing this ridiculous story about how you can make all this money just by recruiting a few people, and then you don't make the money, of course, and you waste a year and a half at that. Where do you get the year and a half back?
Right, and they blame it on you. If you don't make money, you waste a lot of time. It's your fault. You did not work hard enough.
And that's the other side of it, yeah, which we didn't speak about. That's the other part of how a cult gains control over you, because they always tell you if you fail, it will be a terrible failure. It will be you personally. So they instill not only a utopian vision of what you could get, but also a terrible dread of what will happen to you if you don't get it. Because if you don't get it, it will only be your fault. You will be a loser, a failure, a person who didn't have good character, who didn't have enough ambition, who couldn't take advantage of the opportunity of a lifetime. What kind of person does that? So if you quit, if you don't make money and you don't succeed, then what they teach you is that it is all your fault. Now, a person who believes that, who never, it doesn't even quite enter their mind that they could have been defrauded, deceived, scammed by charlatans, by people who knew they were going to fail, who lured them into a scheme in which they had to fail. If they don't ever think that, if they think it was real and it was good and I could have succeeded, but I didn't, and for the reason that the scheme leaders told me, I'm a failure, I'm a loser, I didn't think how you would feel as a human being now. You know, you feel worse about yourself. It would discourage you from going forward in your life. And so we often see people who are scarred literally for life from their experience in MLM.
Absolutely. So now let's talk about what could be done to diminish MLMs and the prevalence in society. And what steps could we take as humans or people living in society? What do you think must happen for more awareness to spread so that the MLM, that's a tongue twister, MLM industry could be completely diminished? It seems they have a lot of fronts on their side, and
well,
it's difficult.
They have money, they have politics, political power, they have a tremendous PR or propaganda machine to convince people. But they lack one thing, they lack the truth. They are promoting a lie that is demonstrably false, a lie that can be exposed through conversations like this and through direct experience. So I think the first thing to combat multi-level marketing is truth-telling. More people telling the truth about it, being willing to tell the truth about it, that it is not direct selling, it's not a business opportunity, that it is a pyramid scheme, that it uses cult persuasion, that it harms people, and that it has purchased political protection And that's why it gets away with what it does. When people see that, they can turn their back, walk away, won't join. Beyond that, if people want to do more, it will probably require political action. Somebody at a higher level, at state or federal level, needs to blow the whistle and tell the truth. I used in my book, in Ponzi-nomics, I used the example of cigarette smoking. I'm old enough to remember when cigarette smoking was, everybody smoked, practically. It was totally legal, of course. It was considered healthy. And if you were to say that I think it causes illness, people would say, wait a minute, that's never been proven. That you have no right to say that. That's not ever been proven. And if it were that bad, how would they be able to sell it? And on television, they had people in white coats that look like doctors that have a stethoscope smoking, telling you it's perfectly fine. Beautiful young couples that were out enjoying life, smoking. No thought of it ever making you sick, and never the word addictive. And yet now we all know that it causes cancer, heart disease, and it's addictive. Now, how did that come about? Well, for a long time, it didn't come about. For a long time, the cigarette industry, with its lobbying and its PR and its propaganda, prevailed. But enough people started telling the truth. Finally, somebody in higher places at the university level, in government, finally said, this is, something's not right here. And we've got to begin investigating this. And I think multi-level marketing will go that path too. But at this point, we're still at the truth-telling level. More and more people are starting to tell the truth. And when enough people tell the truth about it, eventually people in higher places in Congress will have to do something.
Absolutely. Right now, it seems like there's no political will, but maybe in the future, it could be brighter.
It could be brighter. Again, if you had been around in the 1950s or even the early 1960s, if you've ever seen a television show, Mad Men, about the Madison Avenue advertising industry, I think it was on HBO. This whole series, several seasons, and it's set in New York, and it's set in the late 50s and early 60s. Everybody's smoking. Everybody's smoking. When you went into a conference room, everybody's lit up smoking. The idea that it was addictive and lethal and killing them, nobody thought about that then. But today, you went in those same offices, you wouldn't be allowed to smoke. You couldn't even smoke in the building. And you couldn't get insurance if you were a smoker. And I mean, today it is, and of course they can't advertise like they used to. And the lobbying organization, by the way, was disbanded. That was part of the settlement that the cigarette industry made. They had a thing like the Direct Selling Association. It was called the Tobacco Institute. It's a big scam organization based in Washington that poured money into the coffers of congressmen, put out all this ridiculous propaganda. They shut it down. So that's coming. I think it's coming, but
the question is how soon?
How soon?
And let's end this interview on a good note. Has there been any progress made to spread awareness of multi-level marketing throughout the years between government regulations or people speaking out or social media presence? Has the multi-level marketing industry diminished? And industry so-called, it's not really a business.
Yeah, it's not an industry because it's not producing value. It's taking value from people, and it's operating deceptively, completely on deception. But yes, I think the answer is there has been progress. Again, I go back in my history of what I faced when I wrote the book False Prophets, which came out in late 1997. There was just nobody. There were no websites. The websites were just beginning at that time. There were no anti-MLM websites for many years. the first few that were started, many of them were shut down because the multi-level marketing companies would sue them. There was very little discussion about multi-level. Multi-level marketing was not in movies. You never saw it referenced in the news media, almost ever. But think in recent years, what we've seen. First of all, the great documentary called Betting on Zero about Herbalife and the stock market event there that has been seen by millions. The John Oliver Show, very famous comedian on HBO. He did a show at the end of 2016, completely on multi-level marketing. He devastated, said everything we're saying right here: scam, pyramid scheme, fraud, cult, right? Complete. If you go on YouTube and just put in there John Oliver MLM and get that show, you'll see that over 25 million people have seen that show now, have viewed it. It may be higher now. It may be closer to 30 million. Then there was this wonderful podcast called The Dream, 12-part series that went into the history of multi-level marketing, where it came from. I was involved very much in helping them produce that. Millions of people have heard that, listened to it. It's very popular. Today is September 8th, I believe, and on the 10th on Netflix, there's going to be a new documentary, 4-part series called Lula Rich. It's all about the multi-level marketing company LuLaRoe, which was prosecuted as pyramid scheme. I mean, and there is the anti-MLM Reddit with over 750,000 subscribers. There's your website.
Yes, I will attach that below.
Website. And this podcast. There's many, many more things going on. So the truth telling is exploding. No question about that. The politics part hasn't really gotten off the ground yet, but it will come. It will follow.
I'm very optimistic. And thank you for your time, Robert. I greatly appreciate it.
My pleasure, Jason. Thank you for doing this.